Hello, so welcome to another reading vlog. This week, these are the 3 things that I'm hoping to get to. I am actually about 2/3 of the way through Heir of Novron, so this is the final book in the Riyria Revelations. We're following Hadrian and Royce, who are originally kind of like thieves, but every time they try to do a thieving job, they get pulled into the magic and the politics of the world. And by this final book, things have kind of escalated. A lot of things have happened. We're now following a bunch of different characters, and it's all kind of coming together in this big war. And at the moment, actually, most of our characters are off on a quest trying to find something that supposedly is going to be important. I'm still not actually confident that it's going to work out like they're hoping for, but I will try to find some time to continue the audiobook of this. Hopefully tomorrow I'll go for a run and we'll get some way towards the end of that. I do also actually have another audiobook I want to read this week. To be honest, I still have like 4.5 hours of listening time on the Heir of Novron. And then for this, I think the audiobook's quite long as well. Oh, 14 hours. That's actually not that long. Is it? It's a 28-hour audiobook. That makes more sense for the thickness of this. But I would be listening to it at 2 times speed, but still, that's 14 hours. So like between these two, it's 18 hours of audiobook listening time. I think it's very unlikely that I could get that done in the next week, but I guess we'll see how far we can get through it. This is a very hyped book where the magic is like hierarchy based, and the people at the bottom kind of like give their magic to the people above them in the hierarchy, so the people at the top are very powerful. And then we're following this guy who's kind of in hiding, who's now gonna try and infiltrate some kind of magic school. I've seen some people having absolute breakdowns about the ending, so that's what I'm the most excited about. But again, will I get to that in this vlog? It depends how much it pulls me in. The other thing I want to read this week is A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians by H.G. Parry. So H.G. Parry is a New Zealand author, which is why I'm hoping she's going to be a new favourite author for me. But also, I tried the first chapter of this and I really loved it. We're kind of following these young people who are commoners, and if you're a commoner and you use magic in this world, you are enslaved in some kind of like awful way. And then we're also following these young men who are nobles, and they're really passionate about getting the law changed so that it's not just nobles that can do magic. And I really liked the way that that was written as well. So I'm hoping to really love this. It's the first book in a duology, and I do have over here the second book in the duology, which I'm hoping to read next month if I can get this one done this month. We have also just started April, which means it's also the start of the Magical Readathon. So these books are both Magical Readathon prompt fulfillers for me. This one though is still finishing off March. So as usual, I'm behind, but that's nothing new. Hello, so I have just run up to the library to return some books that I got in my bag here. And also I just got to the last 25%. I'm always paranoid about vlogging in public. Anyway, I just got to the last 25% of Heir of Novron, and we've kind of just got to the place where we're hoping to get the thing as part of this quest. And of course, there's another big challenge in the way, but I've been enjoying like the action often. I don't like action scenes, but the last little bit during my run was quite action-packed, and I actually was quite enjoying it. It was written in a way where you don't just feel like, I don't know, people are fighting and it's just not moving the plot forward. It was like action and we're going somewhere, and like some cool little bits of magic and like learning about the characters somehow in the middle of all the action. And I really feel that this last 25% is where we're really going to get into the intensity. So hopefully I'm right this time, because I thought the whole book was going to be intense. It hasn't quite been, but I'm hopeful for the end. As well, last night I did start reading A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians, and actually I only got as far as I did in that try a chapter video I did, but I have now remembered some things about what was happening. So firstly, we got this girl, like a young girl from Africa, who's like family is taken away, and she is also taken away to be a slave. And she thinks, well,
at least now, like what I've heard about when these white people enslave you is that you just become like you're asleep, and it'll be good, actually, because I don't want to remember everything awful that just happened. But then she isn't asleep. Like, her body is now completely under control of these slavers through the magic, but she is still like awake in her mind and can feel all the pain and suffering, but like can't do anything. So that's awful. Then we got a chapter from this really young boy who's a commoner, and it seems that if you have like a magical inheritance as a commoner, you're supposed to wear this like magical bracelet that will heat up if you're using a little bit of magic and like deter you from doing magic. However, this young boy is like just having so much fun playing with the shadows that he goes overboard, and it goes really hot and then emits this big screaming sound, and he gets taken away by the Knights Templar, I think they were called. And eventually they decide, he was young, it was just a stupid mistake. He's allowed to kind of get away with it, but it seems like it's going to have like a lasting effect on him, this like traumatic experience of doing magic, but then having it taken away and being taken away. So it's kind of that perspective introduced. Then we get who I think are going to be the main characters, but I'm hoping we'll get all of these characters. We kind of get this young guy who's training to be a lawyer, and he's trying to make the argument on this case where a burglar broke in and this man used his magic in defense. Now, commoners are allowed to use magic in defense of themselves, but this guy, he wasn't a registered magic user. But the young lawyer manages to argue that if he had been registered, he would have been allowed to use magic in defense of himself. And so he only gets 10 years in the Tower of London instead of being taken away for 35 years because he only gets done for being unregistered, not for improper use of magic. Anyway, I kind of enjoy the whole lawyery law side of things, even though it's sometimes always kind of awful that like whether something is right or not gets argued on like the technicalities of law. But it's also interesting how like through those technicalities you can move towards like more justice, or less if your lawyers are less scrupulous because of the way it's all based on precedents. Anyway, I did a couple of law papers in university, so I'm enjoying that bit. Also, then this young lawyer meets this other guy who's kind of like a socialite, but has accidentally found himself interested in politics, like actually interested, and they kind of have this like great bonding moment where they just get along straight away. I kind of love the two of them. I think their dynamic's really great. I'm looking forward to getting more of that. So far, even though I'd already read all that, I still loved reading it again, and I'm excited when I get home to read some more.
Hello, so I have finished Heir of Novron. In the end, because I had the physical book and I just decided to finish it, even though I wasn't going on a run, I decided to like immersion read it, where I listened to the audiobook and I also read the physical book. I do find whenever I do that, I have to like bump the audiobook up even faster. Like I was already listening to this on 2.25 speed, which is quite fast for me, but like I normally kind of do 1.75 to 2, but I had bumped this up a little bit just because as I got used to the narrator, it still felt a little bit slow to me. So I was going a little bit fast, but I had to bump it up to 2.75, and I think I could have done 3 once I was actually reading it with my eyes as well, because otherwise I would just be annoyed that my eyes would be trying to move forward further ahead than the audiobook. So I had to like hurry the audiobook up to catch up with my eyes. And even then I still felt like I was reading it slower with my eyes than I would normally. Anyway, I did enjoy immersion reading the end. I discovered that in my head I was spelling a lot of the characters' names wrong. So that's good to know, I guess. Also, the ending of this was very satisfying. Everything kind of came together. I feel like everything is wrapped up. I'm not worried now about whether there's any more books in the series that come after this, even though there probably is scope for it at some point, but like it's not necessary. This wrapped up really well. It came together in such a satisfying way. Some emotional bits and like some just such satisfying endings for the characters that I've grown to love. I think Michael J. Sullivan did a really great job in this series of like just letting you get to know the characters. And I am now quite excited to continue. I have this book, which is the next book in publication order of this series, where it goes back in the chronology, goes back into the mythology of this world. So I'm excited to learn kind of a lot more about what really happened back then, because we learned a lot in this, but there's definitely still a lot to learn, which is why he has a whole nother series about it, I guess. As well, I did read some more of A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians. I would say it's not really going in the direction that I thought it would, or it's not being written in the way that I thought it would, but I am still enjoying it. I did have to just suspend my disbelief a little bit, where one of our two guys has become the Prime Minister, and the kind of the process of him becoming Prime Minister at like 24 was not entirely clear to me. And then even now he's Prime Minister, and sure, he's working really hard, but sometimes he just seems like he's gallivanting off, and like, shouldn't someone be watching him? Shouldn't he have bodyguards, or like at least more servants watching out for him or something, more staff? I don't know. This is set late 1700s in Europe. So in London, basically we've got these two guys. One is now Prime Minister. The other one was talking about becoming like a Templar knight, but decided instead that he would be a politician working for God. I don't know, but he's trying to make the world a better place. And that means trying to get rid of slavery as well. Like, he kind of was following down the route of like, people, commoners, should be free to use their magic. And then he was like, wow, these slaves are being enslaved by magic. That's terrible. That slavery shouldn't be a thing. So we'll see how he goes with that. It's also linked into France. There is something suspicious going in France. These two guys did go to France at one point, and they ran into this rogue shadow. So it seems like a lot of the magic in this is elemental based, and the shadowmancers see shadows as just another element. But sometimes it seems like shadows can be rogue or like free and getting up to mischief, and that's kind of considered more dark magic. There is also vampires, or some people just have like the ability to do mesmerizing, where they can like control people's thoughts or like influence people's thoughts. And it does seem like then they're using alchemy to use that power to control the slaves. So everything's all kind of linked together. But there is also in France this other lawyer who's kind of doing the same thing the Prime Minister was doing when he was a lawyer, where he's trying to get the commoners off when they've been brought up for not being properly registered to do magic. He's kind of doing that, but again, something dodgy is going on in France, and he has this darker influence on him. And then also, we did get a little bit more of the slave who's now in Jamaica, the slave girl, and her experience of being like stuck in her body as a slave. I feel like there's like a lot going on, and we're not really following the characters along in a way that I would normally like, but we're also getting so much information about the world and the history and the politics of it that I'm still having a great time. I will say though, actually, the second kind of part, there isn't really chapters in here, so who knows, but the second kind of part that we got with these two guys, I had forgotten whose name was who, and I made the wrong guess. And then I was kind of confused, but it kind of made sense. And then when the guy got made Prime Minister, I was like, what? But it still doesn't make sense either way, but it makes a lot more sense when you get the names around the right way. I think some of that was definitely my own fault for not paying enough attention to names or just being bad at names. But maybe part of it was also that they're not quite different enough. Also, definitely the dialogue of those guys is written in a way that's very like over the top intellectual, like very verbose. We've got these guys, you know, who like making speeches in Parliament and that kind of thing. So when they talk to each other, like they're very genuine, and you can tell that they really care about each other, but like they talk a lot. They say things in fancy ways. It fits their characters, but sometimes it's a bit like, oh, can you guys stop talking? Like, it's a lot to read. Anyway, I'm enjoying this, even though it's not what I thought it would be. So I will try and continue some more of that tonight, even though I'm quickly running out of day. Also, I was gonna maybe go on a run tomorrow and listen to this, but it's supposed to rain all day tomorrow. So if it does that, I don't know when I'll get to this. I mean, I have this physically as well as the audiobook, so I'm tempted to do some more immersion reading. I guess we'll see.
I just sat down to film and somebody has started like weed whacking or something right outside in the neighbor's house or on the neighbor's property. That's very inconvenient timing. Also, it's so hot in here again and I can't open the window because it's too windy. But also, like, you probably can't hear that too much. But if I open the window, you will. Will you? I don't know. Maybe it's okay. Anyway, I wanted to tell you about my reading. So, oh, actually, I wanted to tell you that this arrived. I ordered 3 books, including this. And the first one came pretty quickly. The second one was supposed to come and still hasn't come. It's The Martian Contingency. And it was meant to come before this one came. This one wasn't meant to come till May, and I was a bit worried because I wanted to read it in April. But now it's turned up and it's beautiful. I can see, which I didn't know, that it kind of has like little pictures inside it. Like nothing too fancy, but just like a nice addition to the atmosphere, I guess. I'm very excited to read this. I might try and read it even earlier than my reading plan had it because I think it's going to be a really great time. So I'm glad I've got that. The other thing that I've been reading is this, and I'm now 200 pages in, which I guess is like 40% of the way in because I think it's like 500 and something pages. What it is making me want to do is do some research into history because so one of the characters in here is King George, who went mad, and it kind of explained his madness as being related to his magic. And now I'm wondering if a lot of the other characters in here, or the politicians, were actually politicians involved with abolishing the slave trade in real life. Maybe I'm going to do some research. Usually I don't really like historical fiction, and part of it is because it just assumes a bunch of knowledge that I don't have. Oh my god, that gardening sound out there is so annoying. Anyway, is that why I don't like historical fiction? I don't know. I think part of it is that. Part of it is just that it's boring. I don't know, maybe in terms of the language. But this also has a lot of that kind of language, and I don't mind it in this. I wouldn't say that I'm loving this, but I'm still like really interested in learning about what's happening in this world, and I'm loving seeing the little clues about what's happening with this darker magic thing, but also just seeing the way that magic is coloring like these historical events. I have to believe that I'm going to be able to remove that sound when I edit this video. It's probably not that loud. You're probably watching it. Hopefully you're watching it and being like, what is she talking about? Anyway, I'm going to be continuing this. What else? Oh, the other thing is I did start listening to The Will of the Many. It was raining yesterday and I didn't really want to go for a run, but I did want to listen to my audiobook, so I went for a run in a little break in the rain. But I only went for a short run, so I didn't get very far in. I think I'm only like an hour and a half into it, and I didn't even get, I don't think, to the end of the second chapter because I'd already read the first chapter in my try a chapter book series videos that I'm doing. So I'd already read that first chapter, but I'd actually forgotten that the setup is we have this guy working in like this prison, except it's a prison where they put people in these sappers that basically will like sap their will from them, and it's clearly a very awful thing being done to them. And part of what's making our main character really hate the hierarchy, which is the power in this world that like runs the magic. So that was just as creepy and great as I remembered it, even though I'd forgotten a lot of it. But then the second chapter, he basically goes off and he's entering in these competitions where he's basically fighting against people of a higher magical level than him. Like not a magical battle, just a physical battle, but seems like if they have people's will ceded to them, these people at the higher level basically will like punch with extra strength, and like it aids them in different ways in the fight. And it's not necessarily that he's doing these fights to win. Part of what he's being paid for is just to lose sometimes and like be beaten up really badly. And I wasn't really enjoying that chapter. Like reading about a guy fighting and being beaten up, or like actually doing quite well in this case. It seems like he is a great fighter. Seems like he's doing this to like become a better fighter for whatever purposes he wants to do that. But it was just really boring. So I'm hoping it will get more exciting when I go on another run. Tomorrow, maybe. Tonight we are going to go to see a local documentary about a local record store. I don't really know what that's going to be like, but
that's our plans for the evening. We don't go out that much, or we haven't gone out that much in our new local town, so we'll see what that's like, I guess. Oh, okay, so I have not read any more of this one, but I have just gotten back from my run and I have made some progress on The Will of the Many. I put my bookmark in so I would know how far through I was. I feel like the audiobook is saying I'm like a third of the way through, but when I look at my progress with the bookmark, it doesn't look like a third of the way through to me. So is that a quirk of the audiobook, or is it that I'm not really that far and my maths is bad? I'm not sure. Anyway, The Will of the Many. I can totally see why so many people compare this to Red Rising, because it's the same kind of thing where someone is infiltrating the upper elites. I guess in Red Rising, though, he's got more of like a plan in mind. This, it's kind of like he's just supposed to go there and spy and find out something that they suspect is happening, but they don't actually know what might be happening. So it's all very airy-fairy, and I just feel like I'm not getting the motivations of the characters, and so then I'm not invested in the story. I actually started talking about that Red Rising comparison because I was gonna say, like, I didn't really like Red Rising, and so maybe that's why I'm not loving this. But also, from what I just said, I feel like Red Rising was actually a little bit better, but maybe I'm not disliking this as much as I liked Red Rising. So anyway, that's a lot of conflicting thoughts that don't make any sense. I just don't really care about the main character, though. It is interesting, but as I said, like, we're a third of the way through the book, and really we're still like preparing for him to go to this military school and like try and figure out what's going on there, but he hasn't actually done anything yet. And like, we're getting introduced to all these different characters and like political conspiracies and like people on different sides of things. And I just don't see the point of any of it so far. I do know, so in this world, the hierarchy who does this will-based magic is kind of the government, the way that things are being run. And our main character doesn't agree with the concept of people ceding their will to others, so he's refused to ever do it. And like, I feel like what's being talked about there could be something interesting, but mostly that's not what this book is about so far. I expect it will get into it, but I'm impatient. I also do wonder, though, if it's because of the audiobook narrator. Like, I would say the audiobook narration's quite good, but is there something about the way that the guy is speaking that's turning me off? Like, our main character is very Mary Sue, like good at everything. So like, definitely someone I probably wouldn't like in real life. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this, but I guess, I don't know. I don't know. I was going to do housework tomorrow, but now we're thinking of going to the next biggest town from here. It's like an hour's drive to do some shopping. So then I probably won't be doing housework or running for a couple of days. So I probably won't make any progress on this, but I will try to make some progress on this. I will also say last night we went to like our first nighttime outing in this town. We've been to a lot of like community events here, but we've never been to anything at night. We're not really go out at night kind of people, but we went to this like local documentary about a local record store, and we were expecting that it would be like a lot of people our age, like in our 40s, because that's kind of like around record collecting age. We were wrong. It was mostly people in their 70s, slightly older than us, and a couple of kids that had been dragged along, but like no one kind of in the medium age bracket, which was fine because we didn't really go along to meet people or whatever, but it was not what we were expecting. The documentary was still good though, and it was an interesting night. So maybe at some point we'll make another nighttime outing in our new town. But if we are going shopping tomorrow, then I need to try and do some reading and some editing before then. Okay, just a quick update because I'm about to do a bunch of housework, and while I do that, I'm going to listen to The Will of the Many. But I've actually read a lot of both of these since I last talked to you because it's been a couple of days and I just wasn't in the mood for vlogging. But firstly, since I talked to you, we did go shopping, and the main thing we brought is new desk chairs. So now I can sit at my desk and be comfortable and like have my back supported and not die. Because since we moved here, I've been using Jace's old office chair because my one that I used to use was okay, but it was kind of falling apart. I knocked around the arms quite a lot. And so I got rid of that before we moved so we didn't have to move it. Then I was just using the crappy one that Jace bought. I honestly don't know why he even bought it because, oh, actually I do know. He likes it because it goes really low. But anyway, it wasn't the best. I did kind of have this dream of buying a Herman Miller Aeron, which would be like $2,500, but I did not sell my house for enough money to be spending $2,500 on a desk chair. It's just hard to justify. So I managed to get this one. I'm quite happy with it. So perfect. So yesterday I went for quite a long run, and then I also did the washing in the evening. So I read a lot of The Will of the Many. And I think for both of these now, I'm about 2/3 of the way through. I will say, I think that my opinions of these has kind of swapped a little bit. So firstly, The Will of the Many. He's now at the school and he's making friends and he's got a bit of a goal that he's pursuing, or a couple of goals that he's pursuing, like trying to find these secrets and also trying to like work his way up in class. And I think it's giving the story like a lot more momentum, and I'm starting to actually care about some of the characters, like his classmates. I care about them. I'm not sure. Do I care about the main character yet? Maybe not quite, but I do care about some of his classmates. And there has been like some quite exciting moments. I think about halfway through, there was a very nice surprise. Also, there was a part with like a dog, like a wild dog that he saved, and then he left it behind, and I was totally on board for this pet wild dog. So if we don't get the wild dog come back into the story later, I'm going to be really annoyed because that's really what I'm waiting for at this point. He's learnt something about the mystery of what's going on, and it's quite like dark and creepy, and I enjoy dark and creepy. So I'm looking forward to the, like, whatever it is that blows everyone away at the end. I think I've got about 4 hours of actual listening time. So between the housework I'm going to do this afternoon, which I'll listen to this while I do that, and the run I'll go on tomorrow, maybe I could finish it off even. I guess we'll see. So I'm definitely feeling a lot more engaged in this. However, A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians. I've found myself slogging through it a bit at this point. Like I'm on page 304. Oh, I'm up to part... That doesn't work with my bookmark. Part 3, Terror. I think maybe, 2/3 of the way in. And what I've realized is that this is really just like a retelling of the French Revolution, which I didn't know much about. Now I guess I know a little bit about it because it doesn't seem like the magic in this world, like it's a factor in everything, but I also don't think it's changing the way that the historical story went very much. But maybe this is the way I like learning about history. Like, I'm not necessarily loving this like I loved the beginning, and I am having to kind of push myself to read it a bit, but there are still some enjoyable bits. It's kind of weird because mostly it's more focused on like the relationships between these different men, like a lot of just them talking to each other about what they're trying to achieve, and also like at the same time talking about their lives, like having children and how they feel and like their health and all that like mundane kind of stuff. But it's kind of endearing. I don't know. It's a strange book. It's not what I expected from this at all, which is a little bit disappointing. But there is still a charm to it. But I don't think that I was hoping this would be one that I would be like shouting from the rooftops, recommending to everyone. I don't think it is that. But there's definitely something that I like about it, even if I'm now pushing through it a bit. I guess we'll see what it does with the ending. I feel like I could just look up what happened at the end of the French Revolution and I know the ending, but there is still like an element of like necromancy and shadowmancy and vampires that has to have been part of the story. So there's still a mystery that we're trying to work out about who has been doing this particular magical influencing type thing. And that's the mystery that's keeping me reading this, trying to figure that out. But probably I would do a better job of figuring it out if I knew the historical characters, because it's probably someone famous in history. Probably. Anyway, I'm going to go listen to some of this while I do some housework. Okay, so I finished The Will of the Many, and I can totally see why people are like losing their shit over that ending. So it pretty much ends with kind of this end of the school year type competition thing, but it's very high stakes and turns into a disaster for many reasons, actually. And so there were moments that were like shocking, and then I could definitely see people crying. I didn't cry. Was it because I was running at the time? Maybe. But some devastating things that happened, but also some like, what the fuck moments. And the very, very ending. To be honest, when I got home from my run, I got this physical book out. I'm glad I had this physical book because there's just certain things that audiobooks never quite convey properly. So the very ending is actually like another part, just a few pages, and I can't really remember actually how the audiobook was conveying parts. It might just have been like saying the name and like with slight pauses on either side, which isn't enough to like let you know this is a whole new part. And then that new part has a couple of pieces that just have like little symbols at the top to like show you that it's a new section, like in a blank page, and another little symbol. Like this blank page actually gives you a lot more context. When I listened to it in the audiobook, I was like, I am so confused. You are meant to be confused, I'm pretty sure. But like when I reread it in the book, I'm still confused. But I definitely have a better idea of what's going on, or I can make a few more guesses with the context that those like pages give you and those symbols give you. So if you listen to the audiobook like me and you were confused by the ending, I mean, you're probably still going to be confused even if you look at the end of this physically. And I can definitely see, based on that very ending and also some other things that happened which are kind of left as like open questions, I can see why people would be very excited for the next book. I'm glad I waited as long as I did, although I also wonder if I should have waited longer, because I don't think the sequel's coming out till like November now. I think it might have been earlier previously, but November. I might even reread this first book in preparation for that. We'll see how I feel in November. Because also I have to keep in mind, like the first half of this book was a bit of a struggle for me. I definitely didn't like the laboriousness of the setup. The setup wasn't something that was interesting to me. It was only once he got to the school and he started making friends. Ugh, my camera battery died. Anyway, it wasn't until he got to the school and he was making friends and he was much more like in the story that it felt like there were real stakes. Maybe it's just because I don't like the main character. I only like his friends. But the weird thing at the end also seems like totally my thing. So I'm excited about reading that. I am a bit bummed though as well. I'm always brushing my hair out of the way. It doesn't seem like the second book is going to have a matching cover to this because they've released a new cover and I've only seen like that new style of The Strength of the Few, the sequel. So like that's kind of stink because this cover is, I thought at the time it was released, quite unique. Like surely they'll do a matching cover. It seems wrong if they don't. Then as well, I have been reading A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians. I'm now about 130 pages from the end. And I think this afternoon I'm just going to like sit down and push my way through the whole thing. And it feels very negative saying I'm just going to push my way through it, but I kind of just want to be done with it. There are bits of it that I'm still enjoying, and like the overall concept I like. I just don't like the way it's written. Like there was actually this big scene with like this army of the undead, and I could feel the epicness of it, but something about the way that it was written didn't convey that. And maybe it's that it's being written in kind of quite a distanced historical kind of way, even though like you do feel like you're there with the characters when they're having these like interpersonal moments with each other, but the big historical events always feel like they're just brushed over to some degree rather than experiencing it with the characters. So it's kind of that it focuses more on these like small interpersonal moments and like the motivations of the characters rather than the cool big historical epic magical moments, which is probably where I would prefer it focused. Even though I do enjoy some of those like little quieter moments as well, I feel like this could have been amazing and it's not quite there. It's another one of those books where like, oh, they had so much potential and instead of being amazing, it's just kind of like, okay, I see what you're doing, it's good. Anyway, I'll finish this off. Oh, actually, one thing I keep forgetting to say about this book is it is making me wish for like these genuine politicians. Most of the characters in this are politicians and they have such like genuine desires to make the world a better place, and that's like motivating everything they do. And I know that there are still politicians in the world like that, but it does seem like at the moment in the world the most influential are not like this at all. And you can actually see some of our political characters maybe losing touch with those good intentions. Well, I guess we could have a whole conversation around good intentions and whether they're good enough, but they're definitely losing touch with what's actually good for the world. And in that way it kind of compares. We have both sides definitely have temptations to use magic in a darker way to achieve what they want, but we have one side kind of taking that temptation and one other side like holding back from it. So like I said, some interesting ideas in here, but just the storytelling's not quite what I wanted. So it's the next day. I didn't quite manage to finish this off yesterday. I finished off I think like the last 30 pages today, and I feel like there were some quite tragic parts at the end, which maybe if I knew more about European history I would have known they were coming. I definitely liked a lot of the parallels between the two men in Britain that kind of had a close relationship, and then also these two men in French that had a close relationship, and the parallels and comparisons between those were quite interesting. And I feel like a lot of this book was really about the loyalty between different characters and how that played a part into things. Like honestly, that played as big a part as the magic in the world. I also don't know that this did as much as I would have liked with like trying to achieve the ability for the commoners to do magic freely and like abolishing slavery like we were kind of setting out to do in the beginning. Now maybe that's because in real life that's how events went, and probably that is what it is. So there's another book in this series. It's a duology. I did look up the second book and it says it's going to have Napoleon in it. Now I don't know anything about Napoleon. I don't think I've read any books with Napoleon in them before, so I guess this is my chance to learn about Napoleon. I saw in the synopsis it said he was a battle mage because they're kind of now having magicians go to war. Anyway, this was an interesting experience, not what I expected. So this was a 5-star prediction for me. I'm probably going to give it 3 stars. There were some things I liked. It wasn't terrible, but it definitely was not what I expected. And I feel like this is a book that certain people might really like, but I don't know if it's a book that anyone would love. I'd be interested to know what people think if they know a lot more about the history that this is actually retelling. So this was a 5-star and then brought down to a 3-star, and then this one I did think I was going to like it. I thought maybe 4 stars, and I think it was a 4-star. So this one probably I got what I expected. This one wasn't quite as good. I did also this morning on my run start my next audiobook, and I got about halfway through it, but I'll probably be continuing that in my next vlog. I have the books here for my next vlog. So I started listening to The Wrong Woman by J.P. Pomare. This is a New Zealand thriller writer. I think this is from a few years ago. And I also don't think this is going to be my favourite of his thrillers. I don't often read thrillers, but I have liked quite a lot by J.P. Pomare. I think the problem with this one, we're getting two timelines, and one is this woman who's in this domestic situation where basically she got married to this professor that she was having an affair with when he was married to someone else, and now she's always questioning what he's doing. Like, is he still out having affairs with students? Probably because he seems like a shitty person, but maybe it will trick me. But I just don't tend to like domestic thrillers with like shitty relationships. I find them quite boring. The other timeline is more interesting. We're getting like this insurance investigator, and he's investigating this car crash where that woman I was talking about has ended up in a coma and her husband has died. Honestly, I'm not really sure whether anyone has actually died at this point. I'm just questioning everything in that timeline because he's investigating that as part of his job. But also in this town, there's been several women over the years, or several young girls that have gone missing, and there's been kind of a new one most recently, and he's sort of interested in that mystery at the same time because he used to live in this small town, but he got run out of town for something he did. We don't really know what, but eventually we'll learn. So I am trying to keep track of all the different plot threads because usually JP Pomare is really good at having it all come together in the end. So that's what I'm waiting for, but so far halfway, nothing has really happened that's been particularly interesting. So we'll see. The other main thing I'll be reading in my next vlog is Age of Myth. So I guess check in to my next vlog if you want to know more thoughts about those. I will also say for the Magical Readathon, I wrote it down, that's why I'm looking down. So this I already said was for restoration, where you had to read a book where the average rating is 4 or more stars. And then this one was for spells and incantations because, oh, I've just remembered, I also finished Heir of Novron in this vlog, right? I think this vlog has been way too long. Sorry about that. But Heir of Novron had the word of in it, and so does this. So that was the prompt for spells and incantations. So far, I've got 2 prompts for the Magical Readathon done. It is the 13th of April. So nearly halfway through the month, and I've done 2 prompts out of 10. We'll see if next week I can do better at getting through things. I do have a couple of extra books I might try and get through next week, but I guess we'll see what next week brings. Anyway, let me know if you've read any of the books I talked about in this video because I would love to chat with you about them down in the comments. And do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.